Hi, everyone. My name is Dave Starkweather, and I'm the general manager here at Glen Eyrie, and so thrilled that you could join us. One of the things that's true about myself and our staff is we love sharing this place with people. And so thanks for tuning in virtually. Hopefully you can do that in person with us at some point here in the future. I want to welcome you to Glen Eyrie. And Glen Eyrie is the home of General William Palmer. He was the founder of Colorado Springs, and he homesteaded here in 1871 with his wife, Mary Ellen Lincoln, and they raised 3 daughters. And then this is the carriage house here, which housed his carriages. It's actually the oldest building on property, built in 1871, and the family lived upstairs while their home was being built. Downstairs, it had 14 stalls for the horses and 2 hospital vetting stalls. But today, it's our front desk and check-in, bookstore, and cafe. And it also has a litany of meeting rooms that we like to use. The general fought in the Civil War for the North. He was the 2nd youngest brigadier general next to General Custer. And he was awarded this honor in person by Abraham Lincoln. As we walk out here, by the way, I'll also mention that General Palmer was the founder and builder of the Denver Rio Grande Railway. And that's basically how he accumulated all his wealth. Now, as we walk out on property here, it's 723 acres. It's really a wildlife sanctuary. It's got some beautiful private hiking trails. We've got bighorn sheep and lots of wild turkeys, deer. And I usually don't tell guests this, but we had 3 black bears get into the castle in the summer of 2019. And so since then, we have learned not to prop open doors. Now here we are standing on the bridge, and this is a great view of the castle. This is not the original home. The original home was a wooden house, and in 1871, and then he tore it down and rebuilt it all in stone in 1904. This stone was quarried from locally here from Bear Creek Canyon. There are 67 rooms in the castle, and it covers 35,000 square feet. As we head up the road here, up behind these trees is Queens Canyon. Queens, the affectionate nickname General Palmer had for his wife, named the canyon after her. Up here is also, the burn scar from the 2014 Waldo Canyon fire. And there's about 5,000 acres of burn scar that drain into this channel here. And we have some flash flood mitigation with this channel that captures all that water. This little cabin up here you're seeing off to the left is a schoolhouse for General Palmer's daughters. Plus the children of his staff went to this school as well. And what happened is that the war over the mountain passes for railroad building became really fierce. There was actually some shootouts, and politically it was tense. And what was in vogue back in the day was really a fear of a member of your family being kidnapped. And General Palmer was fearful for his daughters going to public school. And so he had this built in 1881. Queen, his wife, was the first school teacher in the city of Colorado Springs, and General Palmer being the founder of Colorado Springs. Interestingly, the city was founded as a dry city, no alcohol. He knew he needed families and communities in order to create a lasting city. I'll tell you a little bit about Marjorie. She was the youngest daughter of General Palmer, and she contracted tuberculosis. And a common misconception at the time was that TB came through dairy milk. And General Palmer had dairy cows here on property. And he was concerned that he got it from his cows, or she got it from his cows. And so fortunately for General Palmer, he knew Louis Pasteur from his time in studying railroading in Europe. And Louis helped him design this little brick building up at the end of the road here. That's known as the Creamery. It's the first pasteurization plant west of the Mississippi. And General Palmer would collect all of his milk from the dairy cows and then deliver it downtown to his hotel, the Antlers, in downtown Colorado Springs, and serve it to his guests. As we turn the corner here, you're going to see those red rock formations. That's the Lion Sandstone. That's a geologic formation that starts really up in Denver at the Red Rocks Amphitheater. It comes all the way down the Front Range and goes all the way into Garden of the Gods, which is right next door to us, coincidentally. That used to be, part of that used to be the General's property as well. As we enter the foyer here, General Palmer was well ahead of his time. He turned on electricity the same week that New York City got electricity. You'll see that knight's armor right when you walk in, and that was gifted to the navigators from a navigator missionary couple in Spain. And this dates back to the 1500s. We affectionately know him as Carlos. You also see a great shot of the ceiling there. General Palmer spared no expense. He brought in Italian artisans, plasterwork, to do all the ceilings in his castle. And you also got a shot of the quarter-sawn wood paneling, oak paneling there. And you'll notice the panels get smaller as it goes up towards the ceiling. He was trying to give the impression that the room is actually taller than what it is. Now, as we go into this next room, this would have been the dining room. There would have been a dining table here for about 18 chairs seated around the table. And you'll see back here, there's a brass tab on the wall that we're highlighting, and that would pull down, and that was the back of the house where they'd serve meals through that panel into the dining room for the server to serve. Coincidentally, I'm broadcasting live just on the other side of that wall right now. Now here you're going to see Tom show a unique feature of the castle. It's a secret compartment on the side of the fireplace, and he's going to pull out a fire hose. And this is a fire suppression system. So what happened is the general had the Antlers Hotel downtown, like I mentioned, and it was a gorgeous building. It was the predecessor to the Broadmoor, and the general's own train rolled into town and actually caught his hotel on fire, and it burned to the ground. And understandably, the general became a little paranoid of fire, and so he put in a fire suppression system all throughout the castle. One that I hope we never have to use. That little glass area there is where he'd bring all of his winter plants in. He was definitely a green thumb when it came to gardening. Now we're walking into the library. This is where the men would have retired after dinner for tobacco and pipes and cigars. We use it today for our tea. And this fireplace is a great fireplace. It's comes from a German monastery from the 1600s. And the wood carving tells of the Genesis account of the creation and fall of mankind. This room is the music room, and this is where the women would have gone after dinner. And this is where we have tea as well. And it's just a great room. It's a room you want to be in. The ambiance and the lighting is so fantastic. But this room has my favorite fireplace in the entire castle. And you'll see this white Carrara marble stone fireplace right here. It comes from the same quarry in Italy that Michelangelo's David came from. And one of the sad parts of the Palmer story is that Queen actually dies young. She passes away at the age of 44. And in order to cheer up his three daughters, General Palmer takes them on a year-long shopping trip to Europe and to buy furniture and fixtures for the castle. Definitely a shopping trip I would have liked to have been on. As we step back into the library here, you'll see a painting of Elsie. That was the oldest daughter. It was painted on her 16th birthday by John Singer Sargent. And this is a remake. The original is downtown Colorado Springs at the Colorado Springs Fine Arts Center, which is housed at Colorado College. We'll step back through the dining room here. And we're gonna head back to what was General Palmer's favorite room in the entire house. And this was known as Palmer's Den. It's really his man cave. And this was his favorite fireplace in the entire house. The stone used to go all the way up to the ceiling. And in the remodel of building the castle all in stone, his engineer sent him a telegraph while he was in Europe and said, "I'm not going to be able to save your fireplace structurally." And the general said, "Please do whatever you have to do, save it by all means." And so he just took off the top half of stone, but was able to keep the bottom, and the general was thrilled. And what we're seeing here, that brass square on the wall, north, south, east, and west, is what that stands for. And this was a weather station that General Palmer had invented. And up on top of Major Domo, which is a rock formation here on property, the general had put a weather vane, and that would send an electrical signal back here to his den to tell him what directions the wind was coming from. And that, in the early days, is how you did a weather forecast, by reading the weather currents. The general was good friends with the president of Colorado College, who also fancied himself as a weatherman. And in fact, they were the first two telephones in Colorado Springs, and they would call each other and exchange data. But the general would use that data and develop a weather forecast for his guests down at the Antlers. This is a call box system, and this was originally located back in the servants' quarters. But there is a push button call system all throughout the castle. And basically, if somebody was up in a room and they pushed a button, a placard would drop down in this box and tell them what room assistance was needed in. So one thing we have that reminds me of Downton Abbey. Now, as we head back out here, I'll tell you a little bit about the Navigators, which is our nonprofit Christian organization who owns Glen Eyrie. And the Navigators was founded by this gentleman here in the photo, Dawson Trotman, in 1933. He started a Bible study in his garage in Southern California with 6 or 7 Navy men, which is how we became known as the Navigators. But he started that Bible study in 1933. He then purchased Glen Eyrie in 1953 and became the home of the Navigators. Interestingly, the Reverend Billy Graham actually had the first right of refusal to purchase the property, but he was friends with Dawson and said, "I'm not going to buy it, but I think you should." And we're glad he did. We would never be able to afford it today. The other interesting note in this shot is that on the right there where the cursor's highlighting, that is a terracotta pottery roofing shingle that you're looking at. And it is said that General Palmer supposedly bought a cathedral in Europe that was being torn down. It dated back to the 1400s. And the reason he purchased it is he wanted all of the roofing tiles. And so he had them all shipped back to the US and tiled the roof of the castle. Those tiles have since then been removed, but that is one of the original 14th century tiles. As we walk back out here, we're going to head upstairs, and the general was very innovative. I've already told you about the weather vane system that he developed. We talked about the fire suppression system, but he also put central vacuuming into the castle, which I always thought was a 1980s invention, but it turns out it was around in the 1890s. He also had the ability to capture smoke from all the chimneys and tunnel it underground and daylight it out of a tower smokestack out on the ridge so that he wouldn't get air pollution in the valley. And then one of the other things he had here was this door to the right at the top of the stairs. He had put in a service elevator, and that was definitely not common back then either. We're going to go into one of the bedrooms here, and this is actually the bedroom of General Palmer himself. And as you go in here, you're going to see a bathroom on the left and a bedroom on the right. And one of the things I'll point out is it is remarkable. Every bedroom has its own bathroom. And that was not necessarily the practice of the times. And we're so glad he did. It turns out community bathrooms weren't such a great idea after all. And so our guests definitely appreciate it. But this room here is the general's room, and we almost have no original furniture from General Palmer. He died in 1909, shortly after his daughters sold the estate and sold off a lot of the furniture as well. But it sat vacant for about 10 years and was looted several times. And if it wasn't bolted down, it was carried off. So we didn't have any original furniture until an antique dealer in Pueblo called us and said, hey, we've recovered General Palmer's bed and dresser set. Do you want them? And we said, absolutely. I wish you could see it. Inside to the left here is his dresser. It's a marble top. It's got a large mirror, carved ornate wood. It's just gorgeous. And this is his actual bed. And one of the things to remember is, I want to emphasize, we are not a museum. Even though you see these red ropes up, this is a room we actually use. Someone has stayed in this room last night, and you can probably stay in it tonight if you want to come over. This is actually a part of the same room we were just in. This is Queen's parlor, and unfortunately, Queen did not know the castle as we know it today. She had died, like I said, at 44. But when he rebuilt this, he kept this room in honor of her. And it's a great space. We'll use it for meetings and dinners, interviews. It's the green room for any concert performers who are with us. And then this here is Elsie's room. This is one of our premier rooms. It's an octagonal room because it's in the tower, and is a great place to stay. There are 17 rooms in the castle, and we have premier and deluxe rooms. We'll go down the hallway and stick our head in a couple of these deluxe rooms here. And you can see photos of these on our website if you want to explore any of these further. But each room is different and customized. Now on the left here, you're going to see some staircases. They're steep and they're narrow. These are the servant staircases. Definitely not built to code to today's standards, but these allowed access for the servants to quickly move and access all parts of the castle relatively unseen. This room on the right is Dr. Watts's room. Dr. Watts was the family doctor, and General Palmer, at the age of 71, he fell off his horse coming back from Garden of the Gods. Unfortunately, he was paralyzed from the waist down. So Dr. Watts attended to him, but Dr. Watts also attended to Marjorie, who was the one suffering from tuberculosis. And Marjorie's room is across the hall from here. We'll go there next, and you'll see her room. Marjorie was expected to marry into high English society. And she was engaged to a military captain in England. And not quite sure how it all unfolded, but it seems to be that on the boat ride over, she confided in her dad that she was actually in love with Dr. Watts, the family doctor. And so the wedding was called off, and she ended up marrying the doc. Now, this shot here is this glass balcony. It's this great little reading room. It's a solarium, and her father built it for her because for a tuberculosis patient, high altitude and sunshine were supposed to be the best medicine. And so this is a great feature if you stay in this room. This is Castle Room 207, by the way, and it's definitely in my top 3 picks of where to stay in the castle. We're gonna go back out here and take a left. Immediately on your right, you'll see that hallway there. That's the servants' wing down that hallway. And then here, you're gonna see a groove going up the side of the wall there. And that's where a steel door would pull down. And it's it was part of the roller shutter steel company in Columbus, Ohio. And basically the general thought he could save the castle if he had a fire in one wing of the castle. He might be able to spare the other wing. We go down Oriel Hall here. You can still see the Italian plasterworks on the ceiling. This is a great wide hallway, and the general liked to host a lot of parties. This could house a lot of people. One of the traditions is that General Palmer would have all the children from Colorado Springs each Christmas come to the castle and take them up here to the Great Hall, which he knew as the Book Hall. And it said that he would cut down a Christmas tree from the canyon each year, one that would scrape the top of the rafters of the Great Hall. And he would have a present under the tree by name for each child in the city of Colorado Springs. He really was a philanthropic individual. And this room, by the way, houses our Christmas madrigal. It's been a 31-year tradition. It's a Christmas celebration that is set in the 1500s with singing and dancing and wonderful food. And this is the first year we haven't been able to do it in the 31 years. This fireplace, I wish I had someone standing next to it, is a behemoth. It's just huge, and it's so big they had to build it first and then build the walls and the room around it. It is stone that's quarried from Bloomington. It's Indiana limestone, Bloomington, Indiana. And this is the same quarry that gave us the Empire State Building. But this would have been quarried and put on the train, brought out to Colorado. And we always joke that the general had free shipping and handling since he was the owner of the Denver Rio Grande Railway. You'll notice that steel is a hammered steel above the fireplace. And I'm told that that is leftover materials from the Civil War. And there's a shot of the balcony upstairs. That's where the orchestra pit would be. So it was always music up top and party down below. The last celebration that the general did have was with the surviving men of his 15th Pennsylvania Cavalry Regiment. And he brought them all out by train, put them up at his hotel, and had a huge party, and that was the year before he died. Some great photos of the men from that event at the Pioneer Museum, downtown Colorado Springs. As we step outside here, you'll see that glass solarium that Marjorie had, and then you also see those two little sections of tiled roof. And that actually is the only part of the castle roof that remains with the tiles from the 14th century. As we head down the stairs here, many brides have walked down this stair. We've done several weddings out on this terrace. It's also a popular spot. Our dining room is right off to the right here, and in the summertime, all the guests like to come out and eat on the terrace. It is the most beautiful place to have breakfast in Colorado Springs, in my opinion. That's the bell that General Palmer put up on top of the castle. He was from Pennsylvania, and the bell is from the same foundry that made the Liberty Bell in Pennsylvania. He actually brought two of them, and one of them fell off the train on the way out and developed a crack. And so he put that one in the cupola down at the carriage house. It was a silver bell, but that one you just heard was a brass bell and has a gorgeous tone. I'm told he only rang it when there was an emergency. Now, if you're finding the General Palmer history fascinating, I definitely recommend the Pioneers Museum, downtown Colorado Springs. It's a free museum, and they've got wonderful exhibits and photographs. But there was an archaeological dig that took place just off the property the last 2 years, and they basically discovered General Palmer's trash dump. And one of the things they found in there was Worcester bottles, and apparently the general had an affinity for Worcester sauce because there was over 20 bottles recovered in that dig. This is a great shot of Major Domo. That's the rock formation. You can almost see the cable going up the side of that thing with for the weather vane. It's still there, and Major Domo is the name of one of the general's war buddies. And now back here in the carriage house courtyard, this really is the social hub of the Glen. Even though it's a little bit empty on this wintry day, it's usually lots of people out here for lunch, conversing and laughing. And we've got the cafe inside here with panini sandwiches and the coffee shop, which we'll enter now. And remember, this was the 14 stalls for the horses downstairs here, but now it's our bookstore and coffee shop. There's Brian. One of the things you'll see on the floor right here is a couple things. One, you're going to see X's engraved into the brick floor. General Palmer was trying to give the horses better traction on a brick floor by cutting grooves in the brick. But then you're going to see that metal grate as well. And that's an iron grate that the horse would actually be tied up to the wall and would straddle that. And for lack of better terminology, it really is a horse urinal. The whole floor grade is slanted. It drains all the urine down to a master drain. And it's really a well-engineered barn. It's the kind of barn you'd expect a man like Palmer, who definitely had an engineer mind, to build. In fact, I just marvel at how much I think General Palmer just had fun with all the things that he created and built and innovated. As we head back here, this is our front desk area where guests check in and it all begins. There's so much more to see at Glen Eyrie and a fascinating history to discover. I've really only shared a brief part of it, but we typically host conferences for churches, businesses, and other nonprofit organizations. We've got 95 lodging rooms on property. Again, 17 of those are in the castle. And we put on a host of our own year-round programming which includes marriage retreats, biblical seminars, concerts, dinner theaters, and castle teas and castle tours. With COVID restrictions, we are still operating as a bed and breakfast and have some wonderful winter package experiences to choose from. We would certainly love to host you guys. I hope you can come out and see us soon. Thanks.